Now, in our previous lectures, we have covered different aspects of the organization and organizational behavior, more so talking about organizational goals, the pursuit of organizational goals, the concept of organizational effectiveness, how to bring about changes in the organization, and the field of organization development. To do any of these things, particularly bringing about changes in the organization, the view of the groups is very important. The groups form the basic foundation, according to many, where it links the individuals to the organization, and organization itself can be viewed as collection of several groups. So we will focus in this as well as in the next lecture to understand the group and different aspects of the group behaviors and see how the managers can make use of the concept of group behavior to build an aligned and focused organization. Group dynamics and the focus of the group dynamics we will elaborate in this particular lecture in terms of the following. In this lecture, you must be able to understand the concept of group dynamics, the types of groups, and the group development and the various stages in group development. So, and once we get these four aspects clear, then we will also see how to apply these concepts to build the greater and effective organization. So, the word group consists of, one can define it in various ways, but let us keep the definition to the simplest. A group consists of two or more people interacting interdependently to achieve a common goal or objective. So, the group comes with these keywords. So, there are two or more people. So, unless you have people, unless you have more than two, you cannot think of a group. The second, they interact in an interdependent fashion. So, if they are all independent, then very difficult to define a group concept. So, the nature of interdependency or basically interdependency is another dimension where people do a kind of a coordinated set of activities, and then they pursue a common goal or an objective. So, that means there is an individual view, an individual task, but all the tasks are collectively defines a little larger whole. So, the organization may have several things, but the group has a very specific identifiable kind of a task focus. So, this task focus, the goal, the objective is another dimension of the group, and that is how the group cannot be viewed without these things. More people, nature of interdependence, as well as the pursuit of that common goal and the objective. But the group dynamics, when you see, it implies that the individual behaviors may differ depending upon the individual's current or prospective connection to a sociological group. So, that means how the individual behaves in a group could vary from one context to the other, from one group situation to the other. So, group dynamics has emerged as a kind of a field of study within the social sciences that focuses on the nature of the group and how the members of the group interact, perform, contribute, pursue the common identified or implied goals of the group. So, the group dynamics is essentially the study of the forces within the group. So, the direction, the momentum of each of the individuals helps to know what direction the group is going to take. I think that is the thought of this group dynamics as a field of interest. So, group dynamics is essential for understanding how not only the group behaves but also the organization. So it's extremely important for analyzing the human interactions and also diagnosing problems. Diagnosing problems with respect to management of change, the kind of resistances, the kind of supportive relationship which exists in the group, the facilitating and the restraining forces for any organizational level intervention, and how does the group will come into picture in terms of the supporting such initiatives. So in a group you have strong, focused individuals who also have strong opinions, then normally they may become very supportive for the change, and at the same time they can also come as a point of resistance in implementing any new initiatives. And that is how the group dynamics helps to understand what exactly is happening in a group, and through such understanding we can predict the success or the failure of any initiatives at the organizational level and predicting the behavior of the organization itself. So coming back to much more specifics, if you see the types of groups, one can always classify into basically formal groups and the informal groups. Formal groups talks about what is appointed, what is created, what is defined by the organization. Informal groups talks about what is evolved, what is not so regulated, what is organic, where people come together. Those conditions define these informal groups. So if we continue our discussion on the formal groups include command group, the task group, the project groups, and the committees and things like that. The informal groups, if they include the friendship groups, the clubs, the interest groups, and also sometimes the reference group, these are all referred to as the informal groups. So we will elaborate and understand each of these, and not only understanding and appreciation of the structure and functioning of these two groups or these two types of groups will help building good managerial practices and also build good organization. Formal groups are established by the organization. So that means it is very conscious and deliberate, and to achieve organizational goals, and they are basically referred to as formal work groups. And the most common form of work groups are, as we talked about, are the command groups or the task groups. So what are these command groups? A command group consists of a supervisor and a subordinate who report to that supervisor. So that means a boss and set of subordinates, they constitute the core of any organization. So the membership in a command group is specified by the organization chart. The leader has no choice of the membership. That means the people do come to the organization based on their qualification, their expertise, and so the leader cannot pick whomsoever he wants. In most of the organizations, they are basically appointed or given to the leader. So the leader has to earn that required support, required trust, and establish the relationships so that they contribute. So the formal groups have an appointed leader and also the appointed membership. The task group consists of the people who work together on a common task. So that means they are put together to achieve certain things. It may be a task group, would also be, for example, it could be a command group which has an appointed leader, but the difference is that they all come together to achieve the task, and once the task is completed, they are already, or they are redistributed or back to the. So it means the task group has a very specific goal. So the goal drives the required membership. The goal defines the length of the relationship. The goal defines who should take the lead and who should contribute, and the reporting and other relationships within the group. So the task groups are also called as temporary groups, and sometimes you can also see there are permanent groups. So there is also a word is called the task force. So many organizations create additional workforce. So that is where the task forces come in, and also the project groups and the committees. So the task forces, the project groups and committees are all typically driven by the end results, and the achievement of end results also leads to the dissolution of these groups. So task force refers to a group that is organized on a temporary basis to achieve a particular goal or solve a specific problem. So in other words, if somebody thinking of a parking lot, so a task force gets formed, so they go through the definition and the details of the parking lot, come back and then make a kind of a proposal. So they may consult many people, they may conduct a survey, they may conduct they meet with set of experts, they may visit other companies. So there are many ways they can work, but once they come with that proposal, they may also have maybe some supervisory responsibility of implementing and evolving a kind of a parking lot. But then the end of that, the task force has no role to play further. So the task force can get planned where they want to hire some of the best of the talents. So the pool of people are put together, and so they scout, they visit, and then they choose people for the organization. And once they complete that, and then there is task force is dissolved. So the question is, the task force have a very specific role to play, and the important word is they are temporary. So they are temporary in nature, and the achievement of the task is the focus. Similarly, the project groups have this. They are created to complete the specific project. So sometimes the life of the group normally coincides with the length of the project. It could be few years, particularly in an R&D kind of a situation. So group of experts are brought together to deliver and innovate or create some new products and services. So these are all project groups. So the project groups have a long usually it is long periods compared to the kind of a task forces. The project groups go through a very systematic management practices in most of the organization. And you can also think committees where they are created sometimes outside the usual command group, that is apart from the boss and subordinate structure, and they solve recurring problems. Sometimes a committee to take care of the canteen problems, committee to take care of the transport, committees to take care of the workplace grievances. Committees are formed to take care of the health of the employees. So the question is, these kind of committees, they take care of the recurring problems, and the life of the committee may be relatively long, or it also could be short, depending upon the interests of the members and also the urgency of the task and the dimensions of the problem. So the committees do have different durations, and they may meet sometimes only around the crisis situations, like the negotiation committees. Whenever the unions put a set of demands, they may meet and discuss, but many other times they may not meet at all. So the committees have a structure which are much more loose and much more temporary in its nature. And also you use the word standing committees. So the standing committee is relatively permanent and survive by rotating members. So in that situation, the committee is there, but the membership can change. And sometimes you also hear this term called an ad hoc committee. An ad hoc committee is a quick set of people are drawn to meet those specific situations. And as those issues are sorted out, the committees are dissolved. So the ad hoc committees are much more issue based. For example, some specific facilities to be extended to the particular part of the employee community. So then an ad hoc committee is formed. So they look into the issues, maybe retiring employee benefits. So when they do such things, they come up with a recommendation, and then the committee has no further role to play. One can also use this word, these informal groups, and what we talked about, the formal groups can take the shape of the things what we talked about earlier, where the informal groups that you may not naturally in response to the common interest and also the shared values of individuals. So typically it is the friendship groups or the interest groups. The same language, whatever people are talking about, they may come together, or the people who are passed out of the same college, or the set of people who represent the maybe some the interest group could be music groups. So if they are interested in trekking and adventurous kind of a thing, so the sports related things. So the interest groups and the friendship groups are extremely common in most of the organization, and many of the organizational communication gets discussed in these informal groups, and also the rumors and some kind of anxieties also gets created in the informal groups. I think that is where the managers are very keen to understand the nature and functioning of these informal groups. The friendship groups are associations of people who like one another and who like to be together, and the basis of liking could be many things. So there is the larger the organization, you will find several of these friendship groups, and they are formed because the members have something in common. So it could be the social activities, it could be the political beliefs, or it is the religious values, the strong hobbies they pursue. So the friendship groups in organization often extend their interaction to many of the off the job activities. So that means they meet after the work hours as well, and but friendship always helps to sort out many of the work group or the on the job activities. Friendship groups provide a kind of a basis on which they share some of the common understanding and also pursue some of the activities beyond the organizational working hours. The interest groups are a little more complicated. Interest groups are comprised of individuals who may not be sometimes members of the organization unit. So in these interest groups, so it can also have members who are belonging to some other organization who also have similar strong interest. So that's the time where you will also see a group of scientists who organize a study group to learn about new developments. So it is the tech groups or the technology groups. A group of nurses who combine their effort to create a daycare center at the hospital. So such things, when people come together and then pursue and very single things, and these are typically referred to as the interest groups. So interest groups, they try and promote their strong views and strong opinions both within the organization as well as in the community. So that means in an academic group, the interest groups get formed not only of the people, the professors and the teachers who are working in the organization, but similar people who are interested in other colleges or the student community of other colleges, or maybe the industry people who are interested in pursuing some of the topics of interest. So that is where the interest groups goes beyond the organizational membership. We also use the word reference group. Is a kind of a special type of informal group that people use to evaluate themselves. So that means they do have some of the role models. So some of the voluntary organizations become a part of this kind of a reference group. So the reference groups serve two important and related functions. It makes it as a kind of a social validation, which helps us justify and legitimate the kind of attitudes what we have. So then it could be this the appreciation of the literature. So there is a social comparison which helps us to evaluate what we do by comparing ourselves to the others. So then we will move on to this, comparing this primary groups and the secondary groups. Such classifications to basically the group development. When we see group development, we need to talking about the characteristics of the effective group. What are the characteristics of the effective group? The way we talk about the organizational effectiveness, we are also talking about the group effectiveness. The group effectiveness, if you see, the atmosphere is close and friendly, and that means there is basically a belongingness and cohesiveness. So the cohesiveness and belongingness talks about this close and friendly relationship or friendly climate. All members participate in the group, so that means there is a high degree of collegiality, high degree of involvement, high degree of commitments. That is, all members are committed to the group's goals, no excuses, and they all pursue the goals, and then pursuit of goals itself is an important dimension as we have seen in the past. So the belongingness, the cohesiveness, the high degree of participation, high degree of engagement, and also high degree of commitment, all these becomes part of the group effectiveness. And if they are taking decisions collectively, if they are highly serious in terms of pursuing the decisions taken by the group, then we see the group is highly effective. So the members listen to one another and also they share information, and they are open, they are candid, they are free, they are frank, and there is no inhibition, there is no repression, there is no distortion, there is no suppression of one's views, and they share in a free and a frank manner. And also they talk about, they get these objectives in a very clear fashion, but they are also able to express their feelings, express their disagreements, express their ideas to the other members of the organization. So let us look at from group effectiveness point of view, to the stages of the group development. I am going to propose two models, but both the models are very similar, but it is only in terms of its explanation and in terms of the details. The wordings are a little different, but the stages of group development are the following. There is orientation stage, and there is a confrontation stage, and there is a differentiation stage, and there is a collaboration stage. So each of these stages differ in terms of the size of the group, in terms of the tasks of the group, and also the overall climate of the organization. The orientation is the first stage. So the individual members have to decide as to how the group will be structured and how much they are willing to commit themselves to the group. So that means people try to understand what is my role, what is my responsibility, what is the goal of the organization, what is my relationship to the others, what is excellent, what is the end results. So the people try to discuss, people try to understand. I think this is what is the first stage, could be called as the orientation stage. The orientation stage, the members need to get acquainted with one another. So they try to understand the background of the others, the preferences of the others, and then they also share their expectations about what that group should be doing or group should not be doing. So they bring their past experiences, past education, past training, and then try to go with along the views of the other group members. So the group goals and objectives gets altered, gets shared, gets discussed, gets elaborated, and the members relate their own past experiences to the stated goals and the objectives. The orientation stage would lead to the next stage of confrontation. Although what people view as conflict is not a necessary phase of this group development, but confrontation is a part of the group development. So the group goes through this confrontation means questioning, addressing both the kind of the task they have to do, the role they have to perform, and also the kind of resources they will use, the relationship they have to maintain. So many of these things gets addressed in this kind of a confrontation thing. So the purpose of the group and the expectations of the group members are eventually challenged in most groups. So then they try to see what is that I should be doing or I should not be doing. So the struggles for individual power and influence are very common. So people would like to see, yes, this is what I want to see it as, this is what I can do. So people relate to their own competencies, their own interest, and say yes. So the struggle of individual identity is extremely common at the phase of this confrontation. But the group moves into the next is the where the development is in terms of the differentiation. So how the task and responsibilities will be divided amongst the members of the group. So what is that I will do, what is that others have to do, what is that the resource I will share, so compared to the other. So the members often feel that the group is successful as they pursue their group goals. So if people feel that they are important, they are relevant, and they are doing some specialized jobs, and it is valued and appreciated by the others, the differentiation stage goes through in a very successful fashion. Then the next stage is called the collaboration, where the highest level of group maturity. This is the stage where people work together, where there is a feeling of cohesiveness and also the commitment to the overall group goals. So this kind of an initial model of from orientation to the collaboration leads to the kind of where the people accept these differences, but then without putting it as something good or bad, they all pursue and they know how to manage these differences. But these stages have been very well elaborated by the Bruce Tuckman, and they proposed this the 5-stage model called the Tuckman's stages for development of a group. I think the Tuckman's model states that the ideal group decision making process should occur in 5 stages. So as they talked about earlier, is the maturity and the development of the group itself. So decision making process goes through these 5 stages: forming, then storming, norming, performing, and the adjourning. So as we bring any members, if you see, then basically there is a first stage of this forming. So what happens in the forming stage? As the group members come together, the personal relationships are characterized by the dependence. So that means each one would like to explore what other members are capable of, and the group members are very safe, and the pattern behaviors, they look for the other members and other group leaders, and what is that one would like to say. So there is a lot of observation, lot of reservation, and then one would like to somebody to take that kind of a role of giving that guidance and direction. So somebody has to define the agenda for the group about what it's all about, what the basic relationships are, what are the time frames, what are the resources, understanding and interpreting what the others want from this group, and kind of a thing. So the forming stage involves getting to know, seeking the information, making a pattern around this information. So all this is part of this the initial stage. So the group members have a desire for basically an acceptance by the group, and also a need to be known that the group is very safe. So this membership is useful, the membership is rewarding. So these are all part of this forming stage. So in a forming stage, the group members do give information, but also they seek views from the others, and then how the how others view, how others feel, give that support, give that comfort level at the forming level. So they set about gathering impressions and data about the similarities and the differences, the kind of expertise, the kind of competencies others bring to the table, and then the it also becomes a basis for the what happens at the next step, forming preferences for future subgrouping. So you will see the rules of behavior seem to be to keep things simple and to avoid any controversy. So the serious topics and the feelings are avoided in that kind of a forming stage. In a forming stage, that there is more seeking of information, more simpler analysis of what is available, but it is more of an exploration situation for the group members. So the major task functions also concern this kind of an orientation. So the more information is shared, some members take lead, members attempt to become oriented to the task as well as to one another. So the task is the relationship, exploration takes place, and during that the group gets into that kind of a discussion mode and then defining the scope of the task, how to accomplish the task, and what are the major concerns. So to grow from this stage to the next, so each member must relinquish the comfort of non-threatening topics and also risk the possibility of conflict. So that means they have to really open up and then start questioning whether can I do this task, what is that I would like to see the task activities in terms of the quality, in terms of the performance, as we talked about in terms of the delivery, in terms of the role ambiguity, the role conflicts, the role overloads. So many of these dimensions have to come. I think that's where it is storming. So as people get relevant information, as initial information, then they start moving and questioning, then relating to one another in a much more dynamic way. So you really don't know that who is leading the discussion, who is controlling the discussion, because lots of opinions, tons of views will come at this stage called the storming. So the next stage you will see the characterized by the competition and conflict, and in the personal relationship dimension and organization in the task function dimension. So there are conflicts. One would like to say, no, I don't like to do that. I don't want to do that. I have never done it in the past. Why should I not do this? I am more capable of doing it. So many of these things will come with respect to the task, and also with respect to the relationship dimension. So, okay, so I don't think that so and so is capable. I don't have trust. So somebody cannot be trusted at all. Somebody will not be able to do this. So many of these opinions also get generated. So in the storming stage, the relationship gets elaborated, the task gets more, the task structure also gets elaborated. As the group members attempt to organize for the task, conflict inevitably results in their personal relations. So as you see that some people become very silent, there are some people raise their voice, some people would just agree with some of the opinion leaders. So the explicit and the implicit nature of this storming is very interesting. So the individuals have to bend and mold their feelings, their ideas, their attitudes and beliefs to suit the group organization. So sometimes they cannot accept, sometimes they question the ideas expressed by others. Serious arguments would take place, and also would articulate about their one's own beliefs and what is correct and what is not correct. So this is the stage of group decision making where one would see more noise, less of order, leadership gets questioned, or you will also see the emergence of 2, 3, the second level leadership, and the group goes through this kind of a phase where there is a fear of exposure or there is a fear of failure. So that means there is an increased the structural clarification and commitment. So one would like to talk about in terms of what is that I am going to do or what is that I will not be able to do, why should I do, and things like that. So the conflicts may or may not surface as group issues, but they do exist. So you will see a lot of division of lines, strong arguments, raising of voice, and not allowing some people to speak. So many of these things do happen in the second stage of this, where there is a storming. And at times we will also see there may be wide swings in the members' behavior. People get into the silence mode, and also one would like to see there is suddenly the competitive kind of a mode, and then very strong hostilities are expressed, where some opinionated people are questioned, cornered, and then one who is very silent may be pushed. So many of these things do happen in the storming stage. As the storming stage gets into this, we move on to the next stage called the norming. That means the first is we are talking about is the forming. We talked about the storming, then we move on to the norming. So in the norming stage, interpersonal relationships are characterized by the cohesion. So the members now start feeling empathetic about others. Then suddenly they see there are some people who are not participating. Suddenly they see some are not contributing enough, or some have really contributed. So the group members are engaged in active acknowledgement of all members' contribution. So then also people start talking about or moving into the problem solving mode. In any problem solving attempt, the group goes through the following things. One, they understand what is the problem, and then they try and elaborate the alternatives, and then they select some criteria of choosing a particular alternative, and then they evaluate those alternatives to see whether it meets those expectations or not. So in a group problem solving decision making situations, so the members do acknowledge the contribution of the members in terms of idea generation as well as evaluation of a particular idea to solve the problem. So that the time where the task, the structure gets much more stabilized. So the group tries to say some of the rules of the game, so that how each one should contribute, how each one should speak, how one should listen to the other, and why somebody should not interfere, or you please go and write on the board, and many of these things. So that's the time where what are the do's and don'ts gets defined, and they will say that so and so will coordinate, so and so will lead the discussion, so and so will summarize whatever we are doing. So the members are willing to change their preconceived ideas or opinions, and on the basis of the facts presented by other members, and they start listening to each other. So they actively ask questions about one another. So this listening, giving and taking, and that provides a kind of a basis of working. So the norming stage is a kind of an unwritten rules, unwritten expectations start governing the behaviors of the members. So, from the initial forming where they were seeking information, were defensive, to where an uncontrolled participation, strong opinions, and which can divide the group with emotions, which leads to the third stage where the members become more sensitive, there comes the more order, and the unwritten rules of how to behave and work with others would be called as this norming stage. So, this is where the leadership comes into picture, is shared, and the cliques or the small groups start dissolving. So that means you are very clear now who is the leader of the group, or maybe one or more leaders. So the members begin to know and identify themselves with one another. So very clearly there is, in this stage, norming stage, the level of trust comes into picture, and there is a trust, and the relationship goes together, and then the trust, the relationship, the respect contributes to the overall development of the group cohesion. So these members start appreciating the roles of each other. The members give room for each other. That means every member is asked to contribute in different ways. So when the leadership provides that kind of a clarity, that kind of a prioritizing of what one should do or one should not do, it gets stated as some omissions and commissions. So that means when somebody is talking, you should not interfere. Or when set of ideas are put together, I think we need to put some of the minutes. Okay, let's get all the views first, and then we will move on to elimination of the issues which are not so significant. So these are all rule making activities. So the group develops set of rules which enables them to function together. So the norming becomes an important stage of the group development. It is during this stage of development, assuming the group gets this far, that people begin to experience a sense of group belongingness, because there is no tension there is no inhibitions, and there is no repressions. So they become much more comfortable with one another in contributing, in feeling a kind of a relief as a result of resolving many of the interpersonal conflicts. So that means they can discuss openly about some of the differences. So that comfort level comes to deal with one another and move forward, more get focused on the task and the task dimensions, understanding the problems itself. So the problem solving and the task facilitating happens at this stage where the group is able to establish norms, and the norming activities within the group supports the focus, supports the alignment, also starts building that member satisfaction leading to the required relationship and cohesiveness. Now from this, what we are talking about is the major task function of stage 3 is that kind of a data flow between the group members. So they share feelings and ideas, they solicit and give feedback to one another, and also they explore actions related to the task. So that's where in a norming stage the creativity is very high, they generate good number of ideas to look at the problem and the kind of solutions which they have to pursue, and also they feel good about being a part of an effective group. So all these are part of this norming, whereas in a storming situation people would like to get up and go out of the group, because the storming situation builds tension, storming situation builds lot of noise, whereas norming situation reduces the noise. Norming situation provides an opportunity for to express and listen to the others. So from a typical forming to storming to the norming builds that required cohesiveness relationships. So, the major drawback of the norming stage is that members begin to fear that the inevitable future breakup of the group. Sometimes they may think that there are too many opinions are expressed, too many rules of the game are stated, or sometimes they may also become very suffocated, because there may not be very free views to be expressed. In other words, what happens from the storming stage, one may be to say that okay, now you each one will speak for 60 seconds, each one will speak for 2 minutes. So, expression of that, that you need to do everything or state everything within those 2 minutes, some people are very comfortable, some people exceed the time, some people are not able to state at all. So, many of these things will contribute for the anxiety. Sometimes it may also break the group functioning, or simply many of the members may delegate their comfort level to the leader, and then they make the leader to do most of the things, but they may not individually, they may not contribute at all. So, one need to be seeing how this norming affects the individual initiative and also the relationship. Then we are also talking about the performing. The stage 4 is this performing. The performing stage is not reached by all groups. It takes time. From norming to performing means the group members are able to evolve to the stage 4 in their, in terms of their capacity, the range and depth of personal relations. They expand to the true interdependence. In other words, the performing demands a kind of an alignment. The performing demands a kind of a give and take. The performing demands managing interdependencies. I think that is where during this stage people can work independently in subgroups or as a total unit with equal facility. So, they are comfortable to do some task, but all the time they are seeing the whole. So, the roles and authorities are dynamically adjusted to the changing needs of the group as well as to the individuals. Sometimes in a performing stage, the group members are highly supportive to each other. So, they cover up some of the weaknesses, the deficiencies of the other members, and also they overshoot and contribute much more than whatever the prescribed roles are. So, they go beyond the expectations. So, in a performing stage, the alignment is very high, understanding is also very high, and members communicate with each other, and then the communication provides that required role clarity. So, the stage 4 is marked by the high degree of this interdependence in personal relations and also the problem solving to the realm of the kind of a task function. So, all the time they are task focused and people come together, share the problems, they share their perceptions, the feelings, the views, alternatives, so that all the time they are trying to see what more or what better things can be done. So, in the performing stage, the individual members have become a kind of a self-assuring, and the need for the group approval is all past, whereas the group approval is at the highest level at the stage of storming. In a storming, they are looking for the approval, looking for the acceptance of the others, whereas in a norming stage, they are just going beyond that kind of a approval of the group, but certainly in a performing stage, members strongly feel that they belong to the group and they are part of the group. So, members are both highly task oriented and highly people oriented. So, that means they have a great concern for all other members of the group, and they all know the kind of a task. There is a high congruence of this, the individual goals to the group goals, and there is unity. The unity where the group identifies very clearly with what is to be achieved. So, it is complete, and people also talk about group morale is very high. The morale means it is group belonging, that we feeling, esprit de corps, where the individual sacrifices one's own comfort for the common good of the group. So here the individual does not care what is that I am getting or what is that I am not getting, and they are prepared to sacrifice, put everything for the good of the group. And the group loyalty is also very intense. So those of them who see the group is performing means it is very experiential. So the group's loyalty is very intense, which can be seen in terms of the way they work together. It is so called the organic kind of a functioning. In an organic functioning, the structure is important, but the structure only provides a basis of working. But people feel very comfortable going beyond the prescribed roles, but they assume what is required. So one can see a lot of proactive kind of a behavior. People take risks to meet the identified goals. So they trespass each other, but they are trespassing in a way that they are highly supportive. The task function becomes very genuine problem solving and also leading towards what people call it as optimal solutions and optimal group development. So the group builds its cohesion, builds its relationship, manages this interdependence very well, and then highly task focused. So there is a support for experimentation, there is a support for risk taking. So experimentation in solving problems and emphasis on achievement. So people go beyond and beyond the normal things. The overall goal is productivity through problem solving and the work. So the task focused behaviors, very cohesive and supportive relationship leads to the excellence. So the stage 5, what we can call it as from all this, we talked about the forming, then norming. From norming we also talked about the next stage of the performing. So one can see the forming, storming, norming to performing, and the last stage is adjourning. So adjourning involves the termination of task behaviors and disengagement from the relationship. So it's not easy for many group members to leave their group members, and because that kind of a cohesiveness, that kind of a relationship, whatever is built, sometimes it also becomes very problematic. So the group members would like to move together, but the termination of the group is a very regressive movement from giving up that kind of a control to giving up inclusion to the in the group. So the most effective intervention during this stage are those that facilitates the task termination and also the disengagement process. So people are told well in advance that there are some people have to move on to the newer roles, and given that new choices, they have to do different things. So a planned conclusion usually includes recognition for participation, recognition of achievement, and also an opportunity for members to say personal goodbyes. So that means they can comfortably go on to another group and adjust. So concluding a group can create some apprehensions, but in effect particularly some minor crisis, but one need to understand this and one need to manage this. So what is important in this, we have examined basically the different concepts of these group dynamics and the different kinds of groups and how the group gets developed, and definitely the stages in group development. One need to understand each of these steps of the forming, storming, norming, performing, and definitely very rarely one also has to plan the steps for resolution. So in building effective teams in the organization where competition is coming as a business necessity, the teams and team building becomes extremely important. So as we go along to explore more aspects of the group behavior, in the next one we will try and elaborate further on the following things about the group structure and how group size is an important thing. We will also talk about the social density, the group roles as well as the group norms.